Tonight on CFTK-TV News, the RCMP recently had an unlikely family outing occur. We know where this year's Coho Cup is going to be hosted, and we recap some of what happened during the recent BC provincial candidates debate.
Northwest BC's only television news team. We are CFTK-TV News.
Good evening, I'm Cal Maslin, and here's what's making news in the Northwest and beyond today. Earlier this week, the local RCMP had a family outing in a very unlikely scenario. Here is CFTK's Damian Smith with some additional information.
Just this Monday, a rare outcome occurred as a mother and son duo worked a shift together as RCMP officers in the Terrace area. John Saunderson, who started at the Terrace RCMP back in January, was accompanied by his mother, Madonna, for the day.
So we would have planned to go to Terrace to visit him because it was his birthday, mom and dad, you still do those things even if they are grown-up kids. But, it was his birthday, and it worked out. We couldn't have planned it any better than how it coincidentally worked out for me to go out that particular day.
The corporal made the 6.5-hour drive from Prince George, and this has always been a bucket list sort of goal for Madonna, who always felt like this day would come.
I've always seen an interest in the RCMP with John right from, I would assume, since the day he could walk and talk. I could not pinpoint the time I realized, he wants to join the RCMP. I don't ever remember a time him not wanting to.
Madonna will be retiring in a couple of months after spending 38 years on the force for the British Columbia RCMP, and she remains very proud of John, who now looks to continue his career here in Terrace.
I don't think either one of us would have an issue working together. I don't think it would work so well if I was his direct supervisor because, as I said, it'd be hard to take the mommy hat off and be a supervisor. But certainly working with him at a detachment, I would have no problem. I would be very honored and proud to work with him.
From CFTK, I'm Damian Smith.
Residents of Kitimat should continue to watch for emergency room closures as the emergency room was closed for this week for 14 hours for the third time since the beginning of this month due to staffing challenges. Patients arriving at the hospital during these interruptions are directed to call 911 for transport to the nearest available and appropriate facility. Some quite expensive renovations that are being done to the Coast Mountain College campus located in Terrace are said to be nearly done now. The renovations in question is a total replacement of all of the underground services for the campus location, and its total cost is said to be almost $10 million. Things like new sewer lines were installed in addition to some new lines that will pump hot water as a way to provide heat for all of the buildings, and additions like tanks and fittings were added to the boiler house. Most of the cost of this project was paid for by the Ministry of Post-Secondary Education and Future Skills, with them providing about $8,263,000, but the college did use $1 million of their own money to cover the rest of the cost. We're about 5 months away from this event, but just recently we learned about the host of the Coho Cup in 2025. In fact, the tournament will be hosted in the Northwest this year. CFTK's Damian Smith has more of the details.
As one of BC's oldest hockey traditions, the Coho Cup will be headed back to Prince Rupert after submitting their proposal to BC Hockey last week. The Prince Rupert Rampage will be battling against 3 other teams around the province come March.
It's something that's been on the radar for a while now. We hosted the Coho Cup in the early years before we were really fully established. Back in, I believe it was 2011 we hosted. So now with so much support from our fans and the community, we just figured that this is the right time to do it.
The Rampage organization has been backed up by a large sum of the community, where they also were able to come out with a 10-1 win over the Nechako North Stars over the recent long weekend. This was the weekend of National Truth and Reconciliation, where the team wore orange jerseys on the ice.
Over the years, we've really seen the team grow, in the community. All the support that we get from the Indigenous community, for sure. I mean, that's something that's changed. In the early years, we didn't have the backing so much. They're great fans. The fact that we live in an Indigenous community and that we're so heavily supported by the Indigenous population, it's just something that's a good fit. It brings awareness and gives us the chance to honor, to remember those who are lost and those who continue to thrive. I mean, we believe as an organization, every child matters. And it's just so nice to have a platform to share it with the community and the rest of the province.
And starting as an organization back in 2008, it's been a bumpy road for the Rampage as they still seek out their first trophy. And Stava and the club are doing everything they can in order to make sure that they are ready to win on home ice.
You know, to get out of the West, it's really tough. But, you know, with the Coho Cup coming this year to Prince Rupert, I mean, everybody's, you know, all in here, more focused than sort of ever, right? We've booked as much ice as we can for practicing. I mean, the team does off-ice conditioning as well. And, you know, we have trainers and stuff that are working with them, you know, every week. And to win the Coho Cup would be remarkable. I mean, it's one of those things that, you know, it's the longest-running trophy in our tournament in BC hockey. And, you know, the guys are going to give everything they got come end of March to be lifting that thing over their heads.
From CFTK, I'm Damian Smith.
Coming up next, we look at some of the candidates and issues in a recently created BC riding. Welcome back. It's only a little over a week until voters go to the polls, and for those who are undecided, the recent debate was a chance to see the party leaders go head-to-head on the biggest issues facing our province. Over to Rob Buffum now for more.
The three party leaders arrived to do battle in the only televised debate in a race opinion polls have pegged as very tight, and one with a relatively large number of undecided voters.
This debate matters more than usual because the undecided vote is a greater factor in this election.
The bout ended with no decisive knockout blow, despite each leader landing some jabs.
The NDP seem to have approached healthcare with the idea that there's nothing that one more VP and 7 more project managers can't solve.
It's not okay to play politics with it, John. It's not okay to say to one community when you're in Richmond, to the Chinese community, we're going to close the overdose prevention site.
In 7 years of NDP government, has anything been better? Is housing improved?
On pure debate style, BC Green's Furstenau was seen by many as executing the strongest performance.
Sonia Furstenau did what she did in 2020, connected very well, made sure that people saw her as a leader who deserves the vote.
The question now, though, will the debate move the needle? Furstenau has acknowledged she won't be premier. What's at stake? The existence of her party clinging to 2 seats and her own re-election in a new riding, an NDP stronghold with an incumbent minister. Last night might help.
It's a chance for Sonia Furstenau to say, I'm here, you want to keep me in the legislature, vote for me. The NDP might form the government anyway.
Furstenau's NDP opponent Grace Lohr was out today in front of cameras on a healthcare announcement, insisting she was not fazed by Furstenau's night or potentially increasing profile.
The fact that she's the leader of the party is a dynamic in this local election. But for me, it's about connection to community. It's about connection to constituents.
It's that connection each of the leaders had one chance last night to make to a province-wide audience, leaving their parties now actively shaping the narratives as to which one landed the most bruising blows.
The NDP believed that they did very well in the debate, and then David Eby got up early the next day to put in a full day of campaigning. One of his prime focuses was trying to convince voters that his tax cut plan is better than his opponents. St. John Alexander has those details.
Nearly upstaged by some good-looking muffins that nobody touched, but we later confirmed were real, an energized David Eby greeted supporters at a well-crafted event in the closely contested riding of Richmond-Steveston.
The tax cuts that you are proposing would really help.
Those tax cuts and who has the better plan is emerging as one of the biggest competitions in this campaign, with each party trying to convince voters worried about the cost of living that they have the best goodie bag.
This is one of the ways that we're supporting people with those costs by providing immediate support through this income tax cut rather than asking people to wait 5 years.
Full of slogans, it's the battle of the tax breaks.
And for him to come out and say that $900 right away for the Rustad rebate in terms of the rent and in terms of mortgages, those are people, hardworking people in British Columbia that will get that benefit right away.
Rustad's plan would allow renters and mortgage holders to write off a portion of that cost on their provincial income tax. How much they could claim would climb gradually, beginning in 2026, up to $3,000 monthly. Eby promises a one-time rebate check for qualified taxpayers next year, and then says voters would see less money taken off their paychecks. The party figures an average household would save $1,000.
Now, John Rustad's, he talked about his Rustad rebate. I call it the Rustad long wait.
How much voters will actually save depends on their income and living situations, but both leaders will do their best to sell. They have the plan for you. St. John Alexander, CTV News, Vancouver.
The BC Conservatives are hammering on the issue of public safety in this election campaign, and that includes in Vancouver Yaletown, a new riding that could be one of a handful of close ridings that play a pivotal role on October 19th. CTV's Ben Milger has more on the selected candidates and their issues.
It's a new riding, but one with familiar concerns, stretching from Main Street to Burrard and Falls Creek to the Inlet. Public safety and affordability have been the major talking points in Vancouver Yaletown.
I spent the last 30 years as a Vancouver police officer until the end of July.
This is NDP candidate Terry Young's first foray into politics. Having walked the beat throughout downtown as a VPD officer, he now canvasses the hallways of Yaletown high-rises, hearing directly from potential voters.
We also talk about secure care for the small percentage of people who are a danger to themselves and others and suffering with mental illness. But everybody should feel safe in their neighborhood. There's no argument. Nobody I talk to disagree with that. But how we're going to accomplish this is going to be the key point.
Green Party candidate Dana Lynn McKenzie went to law school after having children.
And my husband worked 2 full-time jobs so we could pay the mortgage, and I could do that.
She's campaigning while still working full-time and says when she meets people in the riding, affordability frequently comes up.
People in the riding are telling me that, they want to have a bedroom for each of their children. They want to have a little bit more space and have some security with their housing.
A veteran of the Park Board and City Council, Conservative Melissa DiGenova is familiar with the Vancouver political landscape.
I thought, okay, third time John Rustad asked, I'm going to step up and see if I can make a difference.
There is no doubt in her mind about the most important issues at the ballot box this year.
So I'm hearing from women who don't feel safe walking after dark. I'm hearing from families that are still finding needles in their parks after the sweep, and that people really aren't that excited for the OPS to have been closed down and just moved 2 short blocks up to Granville Street.
Voters must now weigh a diverse group of candidates with a diverse set of ideas for tackling the challenges of living downtown. Ben Milger, CTV News, Vancouver.
Turning to tonight's weather, the north coast is likely to include a chance of showers as well as a low at 5 degrees. The Terrace-Kitimat area will probably see a chance of showers too, although with a low at 4 degrees, and the Bulkley Valley and Lakes District should end up seeing some partly cloudy conditions while their low drops to -6 degrees. On the north coast, the week for them will be made up of basically rain and clouds and not really anything else, while the high shifts from 13 to 10 degrees. In the Terrace-Kitimat area, the upcoming week will consist of possibly some sun to start before the rain comes back, and the high will likely bounce between 13 and 8 degrees. And in the Bulkley Valley and Lakes District, their week will actually see some sunny days scattered throughout the days of clouds and rain, plus the high will jump from 14 to 9 degrees. Checking out the highways now, there will be a totem pole raising on Highway 16 between the Lawn Hill Road and Miller Road in Haidagwa on Saturday. You can visit Drive BC for the latest and up-to-date conditions, and as always, drive safe out there. On Highway 16, there is a geotechnical investigation, bridge maintenance, other maintenance, utility work, and construction work. Highway 35 has some pothole repairs. Highway 37 has some roadside brushing, and there is some construction work on the Nishka Highway. And this is what the roads were looking like this afternoon around the region from the view of the province's highway cams. Still to come, we have more word on the devastating storm in Florida. Welcome back. The parents of a 13-year-old girl who died of a suspected drug overdose at an Abbotsford homeless camp have shared their heartbreaking story in Ottawa as they urge the government to do more to help children and teens with addictions and mental health issues. CTV's Michelle Bernoro with more on their message and a warning some viewers may find this story disturbing.
Sarah McDonald and Lance Charles arrived back at YVR feeling their time in Ottawa made a difference.
I believe that we took the committee by shock. Our statement, our testimony was very, very powerful.
Powerful because they spoke from the heart as they addressed the Federal Standing Committee on Health about the loss of their daughter, Brianna McDonald.
Brianna had over 20 recorded suicide attempts. She tried to overdose on prescription drugs that she would steal. Over time, you could see she was going down a very dark path.
Brianna would not find her way off that dark path of spiraling mental health and drug use. Her parents say the services she needed were not there.
Brianna's father and I would beg doctors to keep her in hospitals. The doctors would overlook what we said and release her, sending us home with Narcan kits.
Brianna died in late August. The next month, her close friend Chayton Point from Mission would also die of a drug overdose.
He had a very hard time dealing with the fact that Brianna was gone.
His parents also say they could not find the help they needed to save their son.
Is it your experience that it became easier for children to get drugs since decrim began? And how did Brianna generally get her drugs?
I believe it did, actually. The decriminalization of drug use and possession of drugs actually increased the drugs coming to British Columbia. It lowered the prices. It made it easier to acquire.
I know how difficult it is to access services, support services for our young people. And I learned that firsthand as a parent myself.
Mission's mayor says after his community was twice turned down for funding for a center providing all-encompassing services for youth, they're trying to take action on their own.
We've set aside $1 million now to do our own locally developed youth mental health center.
I think if Brianna had access to the proper mental help, she'd still be here today.
Charles and his wife are optimistic their time in Ottawa will help raise awareness. They believe Brianna would want her story to help others.
Yes, sir. Very much. We apologize that we couldn't fight harder. I hope she's proud of us for what we're doing.
Michelle Bernoro, CTV News, Vancouver.
What's being called the storm of the century has made landfall in Florida. Milton is a powerful Category 3 storm marked by extreme winds, life-threatening storm surges, and flash flooding. 6 million people were ordered to leave their homes, and there have been stark warnings for anyone who planned to stay behind. With more, here's CTV's Joy Melbon.
Heavy rain, wind, and a swath of tornadoes are touching down in the south as this massive storm begins to batter parts of Florida. The warnings could not be more stark.
There is high confidence that this hurricane is going to pack a major punch and do an awful lot of damage.
Nearly 6 million people ordered to evacuate, scrambling to get out and running into gas shortages.
I've been here for 38 years and never had one that forced us to do this. This is the only place that has fuel.
Hurricane Milton, one of the strongest Atlantic storms ever recorded and possibly the most destructive. The power of it felt by these hurricane hunters flying into the eye of the storm to measure its intensity. The Gulf Coast, the Tampa Bay region in the bullseye, bracing for a storm surge, a wall of water as high as 5 meters, along with punishing winds and flash flooding.
This is the storm of the century. We haven't had this potential impact in over 100 years.
They can't say it enough. Officials warning anyone staying behind, find shelter, hunker down. You're on your own.
Write your name on your arm so we can identify you. We're all talking the same way. Get out of these areas because we can replace your home. We can't replace your life.
And it's not just the hurricane. The White House is battling a storm of dangerous misinformation and crazy conspiracies about federal disaster aid.
Former President Trump has led the onslaught of lies. Assertions have been made that property is being confiscated. That's simply not true. They're saying the money is needed for this crisis is being diverted to migrants. What a ridiculous thing to say.
And this storm is not to be trifled with, and time is running out. Officials now warning residents in the storm zone to shelter in place. Some counties issuing curfews as conditions continue to get worse. Joy Malvin, CTV News, Washington.
And now we turn our attention to the stock markets. The Canadian dollar is down 34/10 of a cent. The price of gold is up $13.30. Oil is up $2.61. Natural gas is up 2 cents. Aluminum is down $40. In Toronto, the TSX is up 77.36 points. The Venture Index is up 4.97. In New York, the Dow Jones is down 57.88 and Nasdaq is down 9.57. Still ahead, the owner of a pumpkin patch had one of his prized possessions stolen. Welcome back. It's definitely not the easiest item for a thief to take, especially when it weighs more than 200 pounds. But under the cover of night, someone entered an Okanagan pumpkin patch and took off with a man's prized possession. CTV's Shannon Patterson reports further.
We can take this one out.
Dave Lindsay has a special reason for growing pumpkins in the front yard of his West Kelowna home.
I just wanted to grow them for my grandchildren. It's a fleeting time for children, Halloween. So I want to take advantage of it.
This year, the 68-year-old retiree grew 2 giant gourds he estimated at around 240 pounds each. He planned to bring them to Nanaimo, where his 3 grandchildren live.
The 2 large pumpkins were going to go for the boys, and I have a very odd-shaped pumpkin in the back that's going to go for my little granddaughter. And she'll still get that. But I'm afraid I'm down to 1 pumpkin now.
That's because this giant, he'd nicknamed JT, was stolen over the weekend.
I know it was at 1:06 in the morning, Saturday morning. I have a camera on it, but it's very dark. You could just see some rustling, no details at all. So that's when it was taken.
The security camera confirmed the when, but the who and the how remain a mystery.
I would say it would take 3 strong people to get, because it's an awkward shape and they're kind of slippery. You know, the vine was cut fairly clean, so I think it was a bit of a planned caper.
Whether it was taken by teenagers wanting to smash it or a fellow pumpkin lover yearning for a giant of their own,
I do not expect to see it again.
his grandsons are disappointed they'll have to share 1 big pumpkin this year, but Lindsay is taking it in stride.
I'm just laughing about it. I mean, you know, when you consider all the serious things going on in the world right now, missing a pumpkin is not high on the list of our concerns, is it?
But he's not taking any chances with his last remaining giant.
As you can see, I'm camouflaging it here now.
And he's determined to grow even bigger gourds next year.
I have a garden in the back, and I'll grow them in the backyard.
Out of sight and away from pesky pumpkin thieves. Shannon Patterson, CTV News.
That is all of our news for now. From everyone at CFTK-TV News, I'm Cale Maslin, and thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.